If you watch Jujutsu Kaisen, we all know who Sukuna is. Allegedly the most evil, if not the second most evil sorcerer to ever exist in history. Really the first being Kenjaku, but most people know Sukuna because of his legacy of the king of curses. He eats women and children. What could be more evil than that? But what if I were to tell you that Sukuna wasn't, or Kenjaku wasn't, the most evil sorcerer in history, or to ever exist? Now, let me tell you about the character who was. Meet Joe Kaisen, the most evil sorcerer to ever. And yeah, you're probably thinking, who the hell is Joe Kaisen? The character I made up, obviously. But hey, wait a minute before you exit the video, before you leave. Hold on now, give me a moment. I always see these videos about people making the strongest sorcerer and what if he was evil and what if he was this. But they don't actually make a sorcerer. They just go to a thing like a wheel, put random curse techniques that we already know exist, and then spin a wheel and then put the character together to make a person. No, hell no. We're going to actually make a Jujutsu sorcerer, or a curse user in this term so that we're using it in, because now we're going to see, can the most evil sorcerer ever to exist be the strongest? But since I put all the hard work to make it a little bit of drawings for this video right here, this is going to be broken down into different parts and series. So if you want to stick around and find out what happens next, stick around and find out what happens next. Because today, we're only explaining who Joe Kaisen is. Without further ado, Joe Kaisen. Because there was already a John Kaisen, so yeah, it is what it is. So to understand who Joe Kaisen is, the most evil sorcerer ever to exist, we're going to go and look at his backstory. Now, as most of you know, most evil people in anime, in the world itself, are created by people. They're created by bad circumstances. They're created from neglect. They're created from all of this negative energy around them, which makes them bad. Joe Kaisen didn't grow up at all in a neglectful, a rude, a terrible, abusive home at all. He grew up as any normal person would in the universe. He grew up with two loving parents who both paid attention to him, and one not being an evil sorcerer that took back shots for a science experiment. But what made Joe Kaisen turn different? What made him be the way he is? The thing is, we don't know, as most serial killers in the real world grow up having these different tendencies to do different things. They grow up naturally being psychopaths. They grow up naturally being sociopaths. Some of them really grow up just being a different breed of person, leading people to believe that there's some type of devil or demon. And same thing with Joe Kaisen. His brain just was wired differently. We don't know if this was a mental deficiency or anything of that nature. He just had very psychopathic and sociopathic tendencies. He understood what emotions were. He understood what empathy was. He understood that those are things that normal people feel because he was taught to believe about these emotions. But for him himself, those emotions did not matter a single bit, because all that mattered to him was why he felt the way he did about certain things and why he liked what he does. Imagine this: a young kid maybe goes outside, sees a spider. What does he do with the spider? He plays with it a little bit. Normally kids don't play with spiders because they're scared, but him, he's invested, he's interested as to why this thing does what it does. And what does he do with this spider? Of course he wants to figure it out. So he breaks that thing down like some Legos, piece by piece, leg by leg, eye by eye, head by head. Even though you can't just take away the eyes like that, that's physically impossible to do. But you get the what I'm saying here. And this is not in a way that he's deliberately trying to be evil. He's not forcefully doing anything crazy and having a weird cringy smile on the face while he does it. No, he does it carefully. He does it in a way that makes him almost akin to what a surgeon is. And it's not the fact that he's taking enjoyment out of harming something itself. He's taking enjoyment out of figuring out how it works. Because to him, gaining this knowledge elevated his sense of life, elevated his sense of self. And of course he doesn't do this to just normal insects. He does this to anything he can get his hands on. The neighborhood cat? Gone. A pet hamster he got for his birthday? Gone. All of these things just happen to magically disappear. Maybe even animals avoid his house because they know something isn't right over there. And every time something goes over there, it goes missing. Anything that is alive, that is. And again, Joe Kaizen knows these things are wrong. He knows how society feels about the things he would do. He's not doing this out in the open just because he has sociopathic and psychopathic tendencies to do certain things. They never do things out in the open. It's never just in the broad mist of day because they got to understand how life actually works. Well, maybe not life, but the world itself and how society views everything. So of course he does this in a hidden spot. Maybe he found in the woods, maybe a hidden place, but everything goes missing without a trace. Not a single blood drop left behind because he knows if anything leads back to him, that this can ruin his discovery. And we all know what happens with socio and psychopaths when they're done with insects, when they're done with animals. They get curious about humans. Now, the thing he fails to realize about humans is humans are different from insects and animals. They're not small. They're not something you can dispatch easily. They're not something that you can just do something and they won't say a word. Because a single poke, a single disturbance, anything with a human, they're liable to tell, especially from a very young age. So Joe Kaizen himself fails at this task. And of course, you got the kids running back to their moms, you got the kids running back to teachers, anything involved, telling them what Joe Kaizen has put them through and done. It could have been something simple, but of course these stories being corroborated by so many other kids around his age, right? All the adults in his life now view him as the demon child. Even though this moniker doesn't stay on him that long, because eventually, of course he grows out of those things. Of course he grows to realize that you can't just do things to somebody because of the risk it will take. The risk that they will tell someone, the risk that something can all come back to him. So he holds off on that for a while. Maybe thinking of it in the back of his mind, not acting on it or thinking about it too much, but having it always in the back of his mind that his final experimentations will lead him to better understand himself. As he grows up, obviously, he blends in with everyone pretty well. It's like he changed, he turned into a different person. But that moniker always stuck into his head, and he actually kind of likes that he was called that he was called something other than himself, because he believes that he is something other than what his name implies. So although that is a name that sticks with him personally, he is just another average person in the world. At least that's what most people believe. But again, we remember this is the Jujutsu Kaisen story, and of course it wouldn't be anything without having Jujutsu involved. So at the age of 12, around where most characters awaken a curse technique, Joe awakens to his curse technique. And what is his curse technique? Well, Joe got a Shikigami, and it's not just any Shikigami. No, it's one that resembles him and how he feels, and something that he held on to for a very long time. Yeah, it looks like a demon. Again, this is something that perfectly resonates with his soul. A Shikigami in the shape and form of a demon. But what can this Shikigami do? This Shikigami can produce and manipulate hellfire. And at the end of the day, this is just fire. It's in the form of blue flames, because I got inspired by Blue Exorcist. Yes, this is that kind of blue fire. But the thing about this Shikigami is it kind of scales to its user AP wise, but in different forms of striking attack. While the main user can use blunt force attack with his punches, this Shikigami has claws. So all the AP that a user can do with his straight fist punches translates into slashes. So for example, if I'm able to break a building with a punch, that damage is then translated into the form of slashes. So the Shikigami is relative to its user in terms of AP. And yes, he does have access to blue flames, but that does not make his flames automatically more potent than any flame in the verse of Jujutsu Kaisen. It has a higher ceiling to be, but at the end of the day, it is still not at that level if the user doesn't make it to that level. And with this awakening, he gets to understand a part of himself that he never did, why he can see such things. And this reaffirms everything he's been done, because he sees this awakening as a reward, as everything he's been doing. Even if other people didn't see it that way, even if the world himself would tell him that the things he does is wrong, fate had other plans for him in his eyes. Year later, after awakening to his power, Joe finally does the thing that he wanted to the most. That boy catches a body, and guess what? With his new power, he's able to get rid of the evidence instantly, leaving no trace behind of whatever action he did. And now with the power of Hellfire, he's able to incinerate you completely and leave not even dust itself. And 2 years later, at the age of 15, is where we will start to explain how Joe became the strongest, most evil sorcerer to ever exist. And at the age of 15, this happens 5 years before the main story of Jujutsu Kaisen. So if you want to see more of Joe, you know what to do. Subscribe, like the video, and goodbye.